Hello everyone, it's Jen, Scrapbena Creations. I'm so excited to be participating in the collaboration hop with Heffy Doodle and honeybeestamps. For today's card, I'm going to be featuring the Who Let the Dogs Out stamp set by Heffy Doodle. I'm also going to be using the Big Pickup Tailgate stamp by honeybeestamps that has a lot of fun little sentiments that you can put into the license plate. And I'm also using the Loads of Love. So I'm using the hearts in today's card to create a fun Valentine card for the dog lover in your life. So for my cardstock today, I'm using the Heffy Doodle white alcohol marker friendly cardstock. And what I love about this particular paper is it's a super bright white. And I'm going to be using my Simon Says stamp ink here to ink up the pickup truck. Now I decided for this card that I was just going to stamp about 3/4 of the pickup truck to the left hand side of my cardstock, and I believe I cut this down to 4 by 5 1/4, I think, just so that it was a little bit smaller than an A2 size card, and I will actually cut it down a little bit more once I'm finished the coloring and getting ready to put the card together. So it's been a while since I've used my Ohuhu brush tip markers, and I absolutely love these markers, so I wanted to bring them out for this particular project, seeing the truck is quite a large area to color, and so I prefer to use my more affordable markers when I'm coloring larger images, just so I can save some ink in my Copic markers. So for the red of the truck, I'm using R7 as the darkest, R6 as my midtone, and then R5 as my lightest. Now, reds can kind of be tricky with coloring. They tend to bleed, and they tend to be a little bit more challenging to blend. So you can see here I am starting out with smaller areas of the truck. So I'm not coloring the full truck all at once. So I started at the top and just laid down that R5 as a base, such as I'm doing now here with this second section that I'm coloring in. Then I'm coming in with the R7, my darkest markers, and laying in that shadow. I wanted there to be a heavy shadow to the left-hand side of the truck. So I'm kind of building from that left-hand side and then adding my shadows around the windows at the top, and then where any part of the truck meets another. So where that tailgate kind of meets that back kind of bump portion of the truck, or the little area there in the middle that kind of bubbles up, I guess. So now moving on to the tailgate itself, again, just adding that R5, that lightest marker, just to give me a solid base here. This does help with the coloring and the blending when you're doing larger areas. And then my preferred way is to come in with the darkest and then the midtone and then finish off with that lightest marker once again. So you can see laying that kind of heaviest shadow to that left-hand side, and then adding shadows to where there's different sections of that back tailgate. So to finish off the red, I'm going to do the portion on top of the right wheel here. Same way that I'm doing all of the other portions, laying down that lightest marker and then adding in those dark shadows. And you can see how well these markers blend. So every time I use these, I always mention that if you're looking for an affordable set of markers, I highly recommend the Ohuhu markers, and I prefer the brush tip. I have the 120 set, and I will have that linked below. You can get them really inexpensively off of Amazon, and they come in different quantities as well, but I really like the choice with the 120. So for the tire, I want it to look black, so I'm using CG9, CG8, and then the CG7, so there's some zeros in there. You can see the actual numbers on the marker, but basically it's the cool grays, and I'm using the 9, 8, and the 7. Again, I'm having my darkest shadow to that left-hand side just because I gave the truck the darkest shadow to the left-hand side, so just trying to keep my shadows in the same sort of areas. Now for the lights, I didn't want to bring in any extra colors, so I decided to do those black. I was hoping they would kind of fade in to the truck a little bit so that they didn't stand out as a major focus of the card. So for the windows, I'm using the cool gray markers again, but I'm using the lighter markers. So I'm using the 4, the 2, and I believe it's the 0, it's either the 01 or the 00. It's really hard to see when you're doing the voiceover. And then I'm blending that out with my colorless blender, just to give a little bit of shading to those windows. Now, I don't think I actually used the 4 on the windows. I think I just used the 4 for the rear view mirror. And then I'm also going to do the bottom portion of the truck here. So the underbelly that you can see with the cute little muffler, and then the, I don't even know what you would call that other area by the license plate. So here you can see I decided that I wanted to have it even a little bit darker, so I'm bringing in that darker marker there and just adding a little bit more shadow underneath. I wanted that underneath portion of the pickup truck to be quite darker than the little area above it, and I also decided to darken the rear view mirror and then added that to the door handle as well. So started off light and then decided to go darker. So I would recommend that if you're not quite sure what color you want to go with, start with your lightest shades, see if you like it, and then if you feel like you need to add a bit more shadows or a darker color, you can always lay those darker colors on top of the lighter ones, but it's a little bit harder to start out with darker colors and try to go lighter. So now that I have my truck colored, I'm going to color my little puppy dog here, and for this I'm using my warm grays. So I'm using the warm gray 9, the 4, the 3, and the 1. And I'm just going to color in my little pup here. I'm basing him on a French bulldog, and so I'm just laying in the darkest markers. Now that 09 I just used for the nose. I'm not using it on the dog's body or head at all. So my darkest marker for the main area of the dog is the 4, and then I'll blend that out with the 3, and then finally the 1. So with this little guy too, I also decided that he wasn't quite dark enough in some of the areas. So I am going to darken him up a little. I'm bringing in that WG4 around the tips of his ears. And then I'm going to add a little bit of R20 to his ears and give him some cheeks and then color in his little tongue. And here's where I wanted to bring in a lot more of that darker color for the mid portion of his head and then his little cheeks there, or his jowls by his nose. So next I'm going to work on the heart balloons. I'm doing a 2-color blend for this, so I wanted a kind of pinky color. I'm going off of the 6x6 paper pad, the new honeybeestamps Love Letters paper pad, which is really beautiful. It has red tones and pinks, and it also has a splash of orange. So for my orange, I'm using YR5 and Y10, and then the pinks I used R12 as my darkest, and then the R21. So I'm just kind of picking and choosing which hearts I want to color in the different colors. At this point, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to add in a 3rd color, but you can see here I decided to add in some reds. So I'm going to use 2 of the red markers that I used to color the truck. I'm using the R6, and I forgot to put the cap out for the lightest marker, but I used the R5. So that mid-tone and that lightest color from the same colors that I colored the truck. I knew that I didn't have to go all the way to the bottom because I was going to tuck the hearts into the back of the tailgate, but I decided to color a little bit more there after I turned the camera off, and then I cut those out. I fussy cut them on the black line. So I'm just going to use my black memento marker here to outline both of these images. I already did that with the hearts, and I was just showing you how I did that with the dog. So here's where I'm trying to figure out how I want to position the heart balloons. Now there are coordinating dies for all of these stamp sets. I didn't get the ones for Honeybee, so I'm just going to use my X-Acto knife here and I'm going to cut a slit at the top of the tailgate. Now, I didn't want it to go all the way to the end of the truck, so it cut through that left side of my cardstock. So I'm just kind of fiddling here, trying to figure out how I want this placed, and then I will trim this down a little bit. I'm going to cut off that orange heart to the left-hand side. I'm not going to need that, and it's kind of getting in the way of positioning my little heart balloons there in the back of the tailgate. So this is kind of a little bit fiddly, but I really love the way it turned out. I didn't want the heart balloons to cover up that rear view mirror. I wanted to be able to see that because I think it's such a cute feature of this stamp. So I have that in place. I'm going to adhere that down with some liquid glue. So I used Barely Art Glue, loving that. I think it's very comparable to the Art Glitter Glue. But it's a little bit more easily available for me to purchase in Canada. So this is my first bottle of the Barely Art, and I'm really liking it. Now I'm just trimming up this panel, and I had to move down to the bottom of my trimmer here. This is one of the things that I love about the Tim Holtz trimmer, is you can have your paper aligned to the top or the bottom. That one little heart I have peeking over my cardstock, so it wasn't lining up properly at the top of my trimmer, so just moving it down to the bottom. And I've already gone ahead and cut down this piece of pattern paper from the Love Letters paper pad. I thought this was a really nice, kind of could be a masculine type pattern paper, so I think this card is very gender neutral, but I did make it in mind so that it definitely could also, it could be for male, female, doesn't really matter. So I really like how that pattern paper has the oranges and the browns in it. And you can see that's where I was kind of getting the inspiration to color my heart balloons. So I wanted to stamp the sentiment, all you need is love and a dog, on the tailgate. So this is from the Heffy Doodle stamp set. I thought that was perfect for a Valentine card. And then on the license plate, I'm using one of the stamps from the pickup truck stamp that says "You're number one." So there's my pickup truck ready to go. And because I cut off this little heart in the beginning there when I was adding the heart balloons to my tailgate, I thought maybe I'd be able to use that on the card, but decided against it. So you'll see it sitting here on my desk for a bit, but I'll use that to the inside of my card. So I added my little puppy to the bottom right hand side, and then I'm going to use the Valentine die by Heffy Doodle, and I cut that out of some of the orange pattern paper from the Love Letters paper pad. When I stamped out the truck, I decided to not use the whole truck because I felt like it just didn't go with the proportion of the dog. So I felt like this was a better representation of size. That was also the inspiration for kind of not coloring the entire truck. For some final details, I'm going to use my white gel pen here, and I'm going to add some highlights to those balloons. I also added a little highlight to the rear view mirror, and then I'm going to add some highlights to the bottom of the truck there, where I'm trying to make that look like it's a shiny chrome to the bottom, and then added a little bit of white gel pen to the top of my dog's nose as well. And you could go ahead and pop up those hearts. I will glue that down straight, but I just left it like that so you could see if you wanted to add some dimension, you definitely could behind those heart balloons. Thanks everybody so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this collaboration with honeybeestamps and Heffy Doodle. I'll see you really soon in the next video. Take care everybody. Bye.